They heard her before they saw her. The hallway went quiet, like someone had muted the entire campus. Heels clicked. Not rushed, not careful, confident. Every student in Westbridge Elite College wore the same uniform gray blazers, white shirts, black skirts and trousers, but none of them wore it like Aurelia Knox. At just 20, she walked like the floor belonged to her father. Her blazer was tailored tighter, her skirt sharper, her hair pulled into a flawless ponytail that swayed with each step like a warning. Her face was beautiful in a dangerous way, soft skin, bold eyes, lips that smiled only when they were about to hurt someone. A boy accidentally brushed her shoulder. She stopped, slowly turned. "Are you blind?" Aurelia said sweetly, "or just poor in awareness too?" Laughter rippled. The boy froze, embarrassed. Aurelia leaned closer, eyes calm, cruel, perfect. "Next time, don't touch what you can't afford." She walked on, and just like that, the entire school remembered who ruled it. Westbridge Elite wasn't a school. It was a marketplace for future billionaires, politicians, heirs, and spoiled legends waiting to happen. And Aurelia Knox was its most expensive product. She moved through the corridors like music followed her steps. Phones secretly lifted. Whispers floated. "That's Knox's daughter. The billionaire one. The rude one. The beautiful one." Aurelia heard them all. She just didn't react. Her friend, or rather, her assistant Milla Hart, struggled to keep up. "Aurelia, the dean is already upset about yesterday." Aurelia cut her off without looking back. Upset is an emotion. I don't negotiate with emotions. They reached the cafeteria. Students stood in line. Aurelia didn't. She walked straight past them. A girl protested quietly, "There's a line." Aurelia turned, smiling. "And there's also class. You should attend both." The girl went silent. She placed her order without manners, without thanks, without shame. The staff obeyed because in Aurelia's world, money replaced courtesy. She sat at the best table, crossing her legs slowly, surveying her kingdom. That's when Blake Rowan approached, rich, handsome, arrogant in his own way. "Someone woke up violent," he teased. Aurelia smirked. "I never sleep humble." Blake laughed. But behind the laughter was truth. Aurelia Knox didn't belong among students. She belonged above them. When classes ended, Aurelia didn't walk home. She was delivered. A black luxury car waited by the gate, engine humming like obedience. She slid inside, kicking off her heels, scrolling through messages she never answered, party invites, brand deals, admirers begging for attention. Outside the tinted windows, ordinary students waited for buses. Aurelia never noticed them. At home, marble swallowed sound. The Knox penthouse sat above Manhattan like a private cloud. Chandeliers, glass walls, art that cost more than tuition. Mrs. Quinn, the housekeeper, bowed slightly. "Welcome back, Miss Knox." Aurelia dropped her bag. "My drink better be cold. Yesterday was embarrassing." "Yes, miss." Her mother, Evelyn Knox, said quietly with a book she wasn't reading. "You came back late again," she said softly. Aurelia rolled her eyes. "Late is relative, Mom. So is disappointment." Evelyn sighed. Her father wasn't even home. Money never slept, and neither did Richard Knox. Aurelia passed mirrors and admired herself instead of family. In her room, she changed clothes like she changed moods, careless, flawless, powerful. She didn't know how to be small. She only knew how to be above. By night, Aurelia Knox became something else. Not a student, a spectacle. The city reflected her attitude: neon lights, wet asphalt, expensive cars breathing power. She stepped out of a club with Blake and a group of elites, laughter echoing, champagne in hand, music still in her ears. A street performer accidentally crossed her path. She paused. He apologized. She looked him up and down. Dreams look heavy on people who can't afford them. She walked past. Blake raised a brow. "You're ruthless." Aurelia smiled without warmth. "Ruthless people don't apologize for being real." The city moved around her, unaware that fate was already adjusting its hands. Tonight was still hers, but not for long. Morning at Westbridge Elite felt different when Aurelia arrived. Not louder, not brighter, heavier. Students in matching gray blazers and pressed skirts gathered in clusters, pretending not to stare while secretly tracking every movement she made. Aurelia walked through them like gravity followed her heels. Her ponytail swayed. Her bag hung loose on one shoulder. Her expression said the same thing every day. Nothing here is important except me. Mila rushed beside her, clutching a tablet. You skipped economics again. The dean asked for you. Aurelia didn't slow down. Tell him money runs better without lectures. They passed a group of girls whispering. One of them laughed nervously. She thinks she owns the place. Aurelia stopped, slowly turned, walked back toward them. The hallway froze. She tilted her head, studying their identical uniforms like cheap copies of her own. I don't think, she said calmly. My last name does. Silence dropped. The girls swallowed. Aurelia leaned in, voice low and perfect. And it's rude to gossip about people who could buy your future by accident. She turned and walked away, heels echoing like applause. Behind her, Mila exhaled. Aurelia Knox didn't bully for fun. She did it because the world had never told her no. In class, rules existed for everyone except Aurelia. The professor spoke about global markets while students typed notes. Aurelia reclined in her chair, scrolling her phone, nails clicking softly against glass. Aurelia Knox, the professor finally said. Care to answer? She didn't look up. What's the question? The room held its breath. The professor repeated himself about economic responsibility. Aurelia sighed, finally lifting her eyes. Responsibility is what poor people call survival, she said casually. Rich people call it investment. Murmurs spread. The professor adjusted his glasses, uncomfortable. Aurelia crossed her legs slowly. If money rules the world, then morality just rents space in it. Silence swallowed the room. Some students admired her, some hated her, some feared her, but no one ignored her. Blake leaned over, whispering, You'll get expelled one day. Aurelia smiled slightly. Then I'll buy the building and teach myself. She wasn't joking. She had never learned humility, only dominance. After the last bell, Aurelia didn't rush home. She lingered, not because she loved school but because she loved control. Outside the gates, luxury cars lined up like trophies waiting to be claimed. Drivers in suits opened doors. Ordinary students crossed streets to buses. Aurelia stood in the center of it all. Blake approached, tossing keys in his hand. Party tonight, he said. Private rooftop. Only elites. Aurelia adjusted her ponytail. Obviously, across the street, a group of regular students laughed. Careless, unimportant to her world. Mila hesitated. Sometimes, don't you want a normal life? Aurelia looked at her, amused. Normal is what people choose when they're afraid of being unforgettable. She stepped into her car. The door closed. And once again, the city bent around Aurelia Knox. But somewhere beyond the comfort of tinted windows, trouble was learning her name. Aurelia Knox didn't grow up, she was designed. Some children learned how to share. Some learned how to beg. Aurelia learned how to own space. Her mornings were quiet in a way only rich houses could afford. No alarms, no rush. Just sunlight spilling across silk, curtains and glass walls that looked down on a city still trying to wake up. She stood at her mirror, tying her ponytail slowly, studying her reflection like a rival and an ally at the same time. 20 years old, too young to carry power, too dangerous to live without it. Her skin glowed under soft light. Her eyes were sharp, observant, never soft for long. Beauty followed her, but she never chased it. Beauty chased her instead. Downstairs, the staff prepared breakfast with fear disguised as professionalism. Mrs. Quinn whispered instructions. Careful with the coffee. She notices everything. Aurelia descended the stairs like a model walking into judgment. She scanned the table. Too much foam. She sighed, not angry, disappointed. Do you all rehearse mistakes? She asked calmly. A maid flushed. Another apologized. Aurelia sat, crossing her legs, phone already in hand. In her world, respect was not emotional. It was mechanical. Her mother, Evelyn, watched quietly. You never smile anymore, Evelyn said softly. Aurelia didn't look up. Smiles invite familiarity. Her father's seat was empty again. Business before blood. And Aurelia had learned early that loneliness felt safer than attachment. She finished breakfast without gratitude, rose without farewell, and walked out into a life that always waited for her. Back at Westbridge Elite, the campus buzzed like a hive built for inheritance. Every student wore the same gray blazer, the same white shirt, the same badge, but hierarchy lived in posture, not fabric. Aurelia stepped out of her car and instantly became gravity. Conversations slowed, laughter dimmed, eyes followed. She didn't acknowledge them. She walked as if the path existed because she decided it should. Inside the courtyard, a group of students were arguing about a class project. Voices rose, hands waved. Aurelia passed between them and they stopped mid-sentence. Not because she asked, because presence demanded obedience. One boy accidentally bumped into her elbow. His books fell. He froze. I am sorry. Aurelia looked down at him. Not cruel, not kind, measured. Apologies work better before impact, she said. He scrambled to pick up his things. Mila whispered, "You scare people." Aurelia finally glanced at her. Good. Fear is cheaper than loyalty. In class, Aurelia didn't listen. She evaluated. She watched classmates like investments. Who had influence? Who had ambition? Who was pretending? Blake sat beside her, spinning a pen. You treat life like a business deal, he said. Aurelia smirked. Life treats me like an asset. Outside the windows, the city moved, unaware that one spoiled girl already believed she owned its future. Night didn't calm Aurelia. It amplified her. By sunset, Manhattan transformed into a playground for people who could afford mistakes. Aurelia sat in the back of a luxury car. City lights sliding across tinted glass like moving jewelry. Notifications filled her phone. Parties, launches, rooftops, yachts. She chose one, a private lounge above the river. The music was slow, the lighting seductive, the crowd expensive. Aurelia entered and the room shifted. Some smiled, some stared, some pretended not to care. She moved through them like rumor and reality blended. Blake followed with drinks. You ever stop? He asked. Aurelia leaned on the balcony, watching boats cut the water below. Stopping is what people do when they're satisfied, she said softly. And satisfaction makes people slow. The wind brushed her ponytail. Her reflection in the glass looked powerful, but also restless. Below her, ordinary lives laughed without money, without protection, without fear of falling from height. Aurelia never envied them. She only wondered how they survived being invisible. She raised her glass. To being unforgettable. The city answered with light, but fate was already watching from the dark. Aurelia Knox ended the night exactly how she began it, untouched, admired, reckless. School bowed, home obeyed, the city entertained her. She believed power meant never being challenged. But power, when it grows careless, attracts attention. People like Aurelia Knox weren't supposed to fail. Failure belonged to students who needed scholarships, not daughters of billionaires. But life didn't care about last names. Final results day arrived at Westbridge like a quiet storm. Students crowded notice boards. Uniforms wrinkled with nerves. Hands shaking as names appeared beside grades. Aurelia stood behind them, arms crossed, calm, bored. Mila pushed forward first. Her eyes scanned, then froze. Aurelia. Aurelia stepped closer. Her name glowed on the list. Not excellent, not impressive, below standard. For the first time in years, something felt wrong. Blake whistled softly. Guess the throne shook a little. Aurelia stared at the board, lips tightening. But only for a second. She laughed, a slow, careless laugh. So, she said, they don't grade destiny. That night, the Knox dining room felt colder than usual. Richard Knox sat across from her, hands folded like negotiations instead of parenting. You failed important units, he said. Aurelia twirled her fork. And you won't qualify for the master's program on merit. Silence lingered. Then Aurelia leaned back. Good thing we qualify with money. Her mother inhaled sharply. Richard studied her for a long moment, then picked up his phone. Send the donations, he said to someone on the line. Aurelia smiled. Failure disappeared, not because she changed, but because wealth rewrote rules for her. Master's year didn't look like college. It felt darker, looser, less supervised. The campus was larger, older, louder. Different uniforms, still elegant blazers, but shorter skirts, fitted jackets, mature energy. And Aurelia evolved with it. Her ponytail stayed sharp, but her clothes grew bolder. Shorter skirts, silk tops, heels even on weekdays. She wasn't trying to impress. She was declaring freedom. Her new friends surrounded her, students from rich families, influencers, rebels hiding behind luxury. Rhea Collins, sharp-tongued and stylish. Nova Blake, quiet but reckless. Zane Mercer, charming and dangerous in attitude. They sat on the university steps between lectures. Rhea lit a cigarette. Aurelia watched the smoke dance. "You ever tried?" Rhea asked. Aurelia hesitated, not from fear, from curiosity. She took it, inhaled wrong, coughed. They laughed. Aurelia laughed too real, careless, young. Smoke curled around her face, softening the sharp princess edges into something human, reckless, alive. She leaned back, skirt brushing her thighs, sun warming her skin. "Masters isn't about education," Aurelia said. "It's about learning who you are when nobody controls you." The others nodded, and slowly, Aurelia Knox began replacing discipline with desire. By the second semester, Aurelia Knox wasn't just known. She was watched. Her outfits turned heads, cropped jackets, short skirts, elegant heels echoing through lecture halls like confidence announcing itself. She walked slower now, not lazy, intentional. Every step said, "I belong anywhere I stand." At parties, she didn't sit anymore. She ruled the room, music loud, lights low, laughter floating. Aurelia leaned against a counter, drink in hand, smoke still in her hair from afternoons with friends. Zane leaned close. "You're different from college days." Aurelia smirked. "I stopped pretending I needed permission." She spun her phone in her palm, checking mirrors instead of messages. The spoiled girl from Westbridge had grown into something sharper, not innocent, not wild, but dangerously comfortable with chaos. Money still protected her. Beauty still followed her. But now, recklessness had joined the list. And reckless girls always attract consequences they can't buy away. Aurelia Knox entered master's school as a failure rewritten by money. She became something else entirely. Not just spoiled, not just rich, but reckless, bold, and dangerously free. Her lifestyle grew louder. Her choices grew sharper. Her protection grew weaker. And somewhere beyond her comfort, life was preparing the moment that money wouldn't fix. Master's school didn't welcome Aurelia Knox. It adjusted for her. The campus was older than Westbridge, built with stone that remembered discipline, ambition, and students who once believed education mattered more than influence. But Aurelia didn't arrive carrying dreams. She arrived carrying legacy. Her name alone bent administration offices into polite panic. Professors whispered when her file appeared. Secretaries smiled too hard. Policies suddenly felt flexible. Aurelia walked those halls like history owed her rent. Her ponytail stayed sharp. Her skirts grew shorter. Her eyes carried a new confidence, not the innocence of a student, but the entitlement of someone who knew rules were negotiable. In lectures, she sat near windows, sunlight touching her skin while the world explained theories she barely needed. She listened just enough to stay amused. Around her, students scribbled futures. Aurelia observed them like exhibits. Who was desperate? Who was pretending? Who believed effort could replace privilege? Sometimes she smiled. Sometimes she pitied them. Between classes, her new circle waited. Rhea flicked her lighter open and closed like rhythm. Nova leaned against walls like gravity was optional. Zane talked like he'd already lived 10 lives. They didn't treat Aurelia like royalty. They treated her like freedom. And Aurelia liked that. She liked that nobody bowed. Nobody apologized. Nobody cared who her father was unless it benefited them. It felt dangerous. And danger felt interesting. Afternoons stopped feeling academic. They felt emotional. On wide stone steps behind the library, Aurelia sat with her new friends. Legs crossed, blazer open, city air brushing her skin. Ria lit another cigarette. Smoke danced. Aurelia watched it like art. You changed, Nova said quietly. Aurelia exhaled slowly. No, I just stopped performing. She accepted the cigarette again. This time, she didn't cough. She inhaled, held it, released. Smoke wrapped her beauty into something softer, less royal, more human. She laughed, not the sharp laugh of dominance, but the careless laugh of youth that finally felt allowed to breathe. They talked about useless things: fashion, scandals, clubs, professors who pretended to care. But under the laughter, Aurelia felt something strange. Space. Her old life was measured, controlled, expected. This new life felt unsupervised. And unsupervised girls learn themselves the hard way. She leaned back on her palms, skirt brushing warm stone. The sun touched her face. For the first time, Aurelia Knox wasn't trying to own the world. She was letting it touch her. At night, Aurelia didn't study. She transformed. The city became her lecture hall. She dressed slower now, intentionally, short silk tops, high-waist skirts, heels whispering authority instead of shouting it. Her mirror stopped reflecting a student. It reflected a woman learning how attention felt. At clubs, the music hugged her bones. Lights painted her skin gold and violet. People stared, not because she was rich but because she carried presence. She didn't dance wildly. She moved like confidence had rhythm. Zayn leaned close at the bar. You don't act like someone who needs approval. Aurelia sipped her drink. Approval is cheap. Impact lasts. Around her, people laughed, flirted, wasted money on moments they'd forget. But Aurelia remembered everything. How power felt, how freedom tasted, how danger whispered softly before it screamed. Outside the club, city air cooled her skin. She looked up at skyscrapers like they were competitors. One day, she'd own them. She didn't know yet that skyscrapers also cast shadows. Weeks passed. Aurelia's lifestyle settled into rhythm. School by day, smoke and laughter by afternoon, neon and music by night. At home, staff learned new versions of her moods. Sometimes she ignored them. Sometimes she mocked them. Sometimes she didn't come home until sunrise. Her mother watched silently. You're different, Evelyn said one morning. Aurelia poured coffee without looking. Different from what? From the girl who used to come home angry. Aurelia paused, then smiled faintly. I stopped being angry. I started being free. Freedom looked beautiful on her, but freedom also made her careless. She forgot schedules, ignored warnings, trusted money too much. She believed the world still obeyed her, and for now, it did. Aurelia Knox entered life as a princess. College made her powerful. Master's school made her reckless. She laughed louder, dressed bolder, smoked slower, moved freer. Money still guarded her. Beauty still followed her. But now, awareness slept. And when awareness sleeps, destiny doesn't knock, it crashes. Aurelia Knox had never walked alone at night before. Not for danger, not for thrill. She walked alone because tonight, she wanted to. The car that usually carried her, black and glossy, waited behind the penthouse. But she refused it. I need air, she had told Milla, and Milla had simply nodded, afraid, unsure, obedient. So Aurelia descended the steps of her luxury tower, heels echoing against marble that seemed too large for the city, and stepped into the streets. The city was a different beast at night. Neon lights reflected in puddles from an afternoon rain. Cars sped past like they had somewhere to prove they belonged. Ordinary people walked unaware of the girl whose name carried weight heavier than their rent. Aurelia's skirt swayed in rhythm with her heels. Her ponytail brushed her shoulders. Her posture radiated authority. But tonight, she felt something else: anticipation. She had earned freedom at school, at home, in the city's elite clubs. She had laughed, smoked, flaunted, and yet, alone, the streets whispered. Somewhere between confidence and recklessness, Aurelia Knox had discovered a truth most ignored. The city didn't care about money when it had shadows. The reason she walked alone was simple: she craved control over her life, over her image. Her car was always there, security always near, money always protective. But tonight, she wanted to feel her own power, her heels against concrete, the night air brushing her skin, the city lights chasing her shadow. And then she heard it, a sudden scream, a loud thud, something broken. Aurelia froze. Not fear, not yet. Curiosity, instinct. She turned the corner and saw it, a young man struggling with a mugger. A simple, human fight in the street. Most people would have crossed the road. Most people would have called for help. Aurelia Knox didn't. She walked closer, not to intervene, not to help, to observe. Money had shielded her from danger her whole life. Beauty had shielded her. Confidence had shielded her. But now, Aurelia realized that life could surprise even the untouchable. The mugger saw her, faltered. He didn't know who she was, or maybe he didn't care. And that's when Aurelia understood. Tonight, the city could bite. After the brief encounter, Aurelia continued walking. Her heart hadn't raced, her steps hadn't faltered, but something had shifted. The city wasn't an extension of her empire anymore. It was a living, breathing organism, and tonight, it had teeth. She thought about her life, about Westbridge, her master's school, her friends, her smoke-filled afternoons, her parties, her carefully measured chaos. For the first time, control felt fragile. She had never felt fragile. Her phone buzzed. A message from Mila. "Why didn't you take the car?" Aurelia smirked. "Because I wanted to walk." But deep down, she knew. She had walked into a reality she hadn't bargained for. As the wind brushed her ponytail, she realized money could buy many things, but not invulnerability. The streets smelled different at night. Not expensive perfume, not elite luxuries, just asphalt, rain, neon, and life. Unpredictable life. Aurelia felt it prickling at her skin, the sensation of being ordinary. She reached the bridge connecting downtown to the uptown elite towers. Normally, she would have ignored the ordinary crowds below. Tonight, she slowed. A man stumbled near the railing, clutching his briefcase. A scream from behind, a car door slamming. The streets suddenly seemed alive, chaotic, unpredictable, dangerous. Aurelia's heels clicked faster, not in fear, in excitement. The realization hit. Her life had always been curated, every laugh measured, every insult practiced, every entrance choreographed. But now, walking alone, she saw shadows she hadn't paid attention to before. The city didn't stop for Knox. It didn't bend for Knox. It existed, and she was small in it. Her reflection in a puddle startled her. The girl staring back looked the same: ponytail, high cheekbones, confident lips. But the girl also looked exposed. It was intoxicating and dangerous. By the time Aurelia reached her street, she noticed it. People were watching. Not her face, not her body, her aura. A kid on the sidewalk froze mid-step. A man crossing the street glanced her way twice. Even stray dogs paused. It was the first time Aurelia Knox felt like she mattered outside her wealth. Her heels slowed. Her ponytail brushed her back like a reminder. She understood something profound. The streets didn't recognize money. They recognized presence. And tonight, presence had consequences. She entered her tower quietly. The elevators hummed around her. Security greeted her with nervous smiles. Everything was safe. Everything was expected. But Aurelia Knox now carried a secret. A city that could exist without her approval had touched her, and she had liked it. Aurelia Knox returned home, still rich, still beautiful, still untouchable by money. But the night left its mark. Her life, once predictable, was now a little unpredictable. The city had reminded her, even queens can walk alone, and even queens can stumble. Tonight wasn't dangerous. Not really, but the next night wouldn't be as forgiving. The city never felt quieter than when Aurelia finally reached the elevator of her penthouse. She pressed the button slowly, heels clicking against polished marble like a drumbeat marking, a heart racing too fast to admit it. Her parents were at a gala. The staff were nervously hovering in the kitchen downstairs, and she She was alone. She had chosen it. Walking home alone tonight wasn't a mistake. It was a test. She had wanted to see if the streets respected her because of her name, her wealth, her beauty. Instead, she learned something uncomfortable. The streets didn't bow. The city didn't flinch. The night didn't care about Aurelia Knox. And she had loved it. The elevator hummed, moving upward. Aurelia leaned back against its polished wall, staring at her reflection. The ponytail, the short skirt, the heels all sharp, all commanding. Yet in the reflection, there was a flicker she had never seen before. Vulnerability. Not fear, not weakness, just possibility. Possibility that she could be hurt. Possibility that the city didn't orbit her. Possibility that her life, curated by wealth, could be unpredictable. And that was delicious. The next morning, Aurelia appeared in her master's lecture hall like nothing had happened, except it had. Her friends noticed. Ria smirked. You look different today. Aurelia twirled a pen between her fingers, sliding into her seat with perfect poise. Different how? Calmer, but sharper, like. You walked through fire last night, Nova said quietly. She smiled, not mockingly, not playfully, but knowingly. Yes, Aurelia said softly. The streets whispered at me last night, and I listened. The lecture hall was filled with students, all gray uniforms, papers in hands, laptops open. They were studying diligently, their world small, neat, predictable. Aurelia Knox didn't belong there. She moved like a storm through an orderly garden. By noon, she had already made waves. She argued points no one else dared. She challenged professors politely, but sharply. She leaned back in her chair, legs crossed, ponytail brushing the chair's edge. Her classmates whispered, "Is she serious? Who even does that? She's scary." Aurelia didn't answer. She didn't need to. Her presence alone was enough. And yet, beneath the arrogance, beneath the perfection, something had changed. The girl who could walk alone in the streets had felt her first brush with danger, and she was awake to it now. Afternoons became her sanctuary. Aurelia and her friends lounged on the stone steps behind the library. The city hummed below. Cars passed. People laughed. Life continued. She held a cigarette between manicured fingers. Inhaled slowly, exhaled carefully. She didn't want to impress. She wanted to feel real. Her skirt was shorter than usual. Her blazer casually draped, heels clicking against stone. Ria watched her. Ever think maybe the city will catch up to you? Aurelia tilted her head, lips curving into a faint smirk. Then I'll catch it first. It was reckless. It was daring. It was her life, her rules. Zane laughed softly, lighting another cigarette. You're terrifying, he said. Even more than before. Aurelia exhaled smoke into the wind. The city carried it away. And for the first time, Aurelia Knox realized she liked being untamed. Night fell again. Aurelia wandered streets she thought she knew, but the night had grown bolder. Neon signs flickered. Rain-slicked pavement reflected distorted images of pedestrians, cars, and her own confident reflection. She stopped near the same corner as before. Everything was quiet, but the air vibrated with the possibility of danger. She didn't feel fear. She felt alive, and that was dangerous. Aurelia Knox, spoiled, reckless, rich, and beautiful, had finally tasted a life money couldn't fully protect. She smiled. The night was hers, but the city was learning her name. Aurelia Knox first felt danger. It didn't scream. It whispered. It followed her like perfume, invisible, seductive, quiet. She had just left a private lounge near the master's campus. Music still echoed in her ears, bass clinging to her ribs like memory. Her skirt was shorter than the rules allowed, her jacket loose over her shoulders, ponytail swaying like she owned the air around her. The streets were thinner here, less noise, less witnesses. Aurelia walked with her usual rhythm, heels tapping confidence into concrete. Every step said, I belong anywhere I stand. But the city was different tonight. Cars didn't rush. Lights flickered longer. Shadows refused to move when she passed them. At first, she thought it was imagination, maybe the wine, maybe the smoke still swimming in her lungs. But imagination doesn't breathe behind you. Someone did. not loud, not rushed, just present. Aurelia slowed her pace, so did the sound. Her heartbeat didn't panic, not yet. It adjusted like a dancer matching tempo. Aurelia Knox had never been hunted before. She had been admired, envied, wanted, but never quietly followed. She stopped near a glass door window, pretending to fix her ponytail. The reflection showed her first smooth skin, bold eyes, lips curved in casual pride, then something else, a shadow that wasn't hers. Too tall, too still. Her breath slipped, but Aurelia didn't turn. She smiled at her reflection instead. The same smile she used in classrooms, parties, penthouses, the one that said nothing touches me unless I allow it. She walked again, faster now. Footsteps echoed behind her, delayed by half a second. Not coincidence, not fantasy. The city had decided to speak. Aurelia crossed a narrow road, lights blinking yellow above her. The sidewalks here smelled of rain and old metal. Shops were closed, windows dark. She reached into her purse, fingers brushing her phone. Not to call yet, pride stopped her. Aurelia Knox didn't call for help. She was the help. But when she turned the corner and heard the steps quicken, not follow, not trail, but approach, something ancient stirred inside her chest. Instinct. She ran, not wild, not screaming, controlled, elegant panic. Her heels slapped pavement as the city blurred around her. Breath caught, hair loosened from its perfection. Behind her, the sound multiplied. One became two, two became many. Aurelia didn't look back again. She cut through a narrow alley lit by one trembling bulb. Her reflection shattered in puddles beneath her. Her lungs burned, expensive perfume mixing with cold fear. A hand brushed the air near her coat, not touching, threatening. She screamed, not loud, but sharp, and burst onto a brighter street where traffic still breathed. The shadows stopped. They didn't chase into light. They only watched her from the edge of it. Aurelia stood trembling, pretending she wasn't, chest rising, eyes wide but proud. She adjusted her jacket like nothing happened. But something had. The city had tested her. And Aurelia Knox realized for the first time, luxury doesn't cancel danger, it only delays it. She hailed a cab and disappeared into glass and speed, unaware that this wasn't random. It was the beginning. The Knox mansion didn't believe in fear. It believed in control. By morning, Aurelia sat at the breakfast table, silk robe hugging her like protection she pretended not to need. Her parents watched her over crystal cups and imported fruit, wealth humming softly through marble floors and quiet staff footsteps. Aurelia, her mother said carefully, "Your driver said you came home shaken." Aurelia lifted her coffee. "I ran into bad city vibes, that's all." Her father's jaw tightened. The man who owned towers, shipping routes, and silent contracts didn't tolerate vagueness. People don't follow Knox daughters for fun. The word followed landed heavier than Aurelia expected. She shrugged. Maybe they wanted autographs. But her father was already thinking in boardrooms, not streets. By noon, the Knox security office buzzed. Screens flashed. Analysts spoke quietly. Phones rang with voices trained to sound calm while calculating violence. Her parents didn't see random danger. They saw business war. Her father paced. "Westbridge Corp has been pushing boundaries." Her mother folded her arms. "Or the Harrow Group, we froze their accounts last quarter." Names stacked like invisible enemies. They didn't imagine street predators. They imagined boardroom assassins. Because billionaires don't accept chaos, they assign a meaning. Aurelia sat quietly while they dissected her night like a market report. She noticed something strange. They weren't worried about her fear. They were worried about their power being challenged. Her mother finally looked at her. "Until we trace this, you'll limit movement." Aurelia laughed softly. "You raised me to lead, not hide." Her father met her gaze. "We raised you to survive." But Aurelia Knox didn't feel like prey. She felt chosen. Chosen by the city. Chosen by danger. And part of her, the reckless, spoiled, curious part, wanted to walk those streets again, just to see if they would bow the second time. But behind closed doors, her parents began moving pieces across a chessboard Aurelia didn't even know she was standing on. They hired new watchers. They ordered quiet investigations. They suspected rivals who had nothing to do with what stalked their daughter, because sometimes danger isn't strategic, sometimes it's human, and they were looking in the wrong direction. 2 nights later, Aurelia disobeyed quietly, not loudly, not rebelliously. She simply went out again. Because Aurelia Knox didn't believe danger should interrupt rhythm, the city welcomed her back with false-come traffic humming, neon blinking like nothing remembered her. She walked slower now, posture still proud, but awareness stitched into every breath. She passed the same intersections, the same reflections, the same scent of rain and metal, only this time. The city watched her openly. A car slowed beside her. Windows dark, engine breathing low. It followed her pace. Aurelia didn't stop walking. Her reflection slipped along the tinted glass beside her. Confident girl beside unknown threat. The car accelerated ahead, stopped suddenly. 2 doors opened. The air changed, not violent yet but promising it. Aurelia halted. The city held its breath with her. A man stepped out, face hidden by shadow. Voice smooth but wrong. You walk alone too much for someone so expensive. Her pulse kicked, but her pride answered first. Then you picked the wrong currency. He smiled without warmth. Another figure moved behind him. Not business rivals, not corporate assassins. Street predators, people who saw wealth. Not power, beauty, not influence. Aurelia took one slow step back. Her heel splashed in water. The sound felt loud. The city suddenly felt close, too close, and for the first time in her life, Aurelia Knox realized no amount of money in her purse could negotiate this moment. The men stepped closer, and the night finally stopped, pretending the city had moved from curiosity to claim. Her parents were preparing for wars that didn't exist, and Aurelia Knox was standing at the edge of a truth wealth had never taught her. Danger didn't come from boardrooms. It came from streets that recognized beauty, isolation, and pride, and decided to test all three. Aurelia Knox had always believed the city admired her. Not loved, not respected, admired. There was a difference. Admiration looked like turned heads, slowed steps, whispers behind her back. It felt flattering, harmless, controlled. But that night, admiration transformed into attention. And attention, when it grows hungry, becomes something else entirely. After the men stepped out of the car, the air around Aurelia thickened like invisible fog. Neon lights blinked above them, painting the street in broken colors: red, blue, gold, like the city couldn't decide whether it wanted to warn her or decorate her. Aurelia didn't scream. She stood. Her posture remained elegant, shoulders straight, chin lifted like she was still walking through Westbridge campus instead of standing in front of strangers whose eyes didn't carry curiosity. They carried calculation. One of them circled slowly, not rushed, not violent. Predators never rush at first. They enjoy the moment where control switches hands. You're calm, the man said. Aurelia's lips curved faintly. I don't panic for entertainment. The second man laughed softly. You should. The city hummed around them, distant horns, muffled music from unseen clubs, wind dragging rappers along the road. Life was still happening while Aurelia's moments stood still. She took one step backward, not surrender, strategy. Her heel slid against wet concrete. The sound echoed louder than she expected. Suddenly, the space between them shrank. The men moved closer, not touching, but letting her feel how little room she had left. And for the first time in her life, Aurelia Knox realized something no professor, no penthouse, no parent had ever taught her. Confidence does not replace safety. One hand brushed her wrist, not grabbing, testing. Her breath hitched before she could stop it. Aurelia pulled back sharply, eyes flashing. Don't! The man smiled like the word meant nothing. That's when fear finally entered her bloodstream. Not loud fear, not cinematic fear, quiet, humiliating fear. The kind that tells you your money is invisible, your name is useless, and your beauty is suddenly a liability instead of armor. She searched the street. Few cars, distant people, too far. The men stepped closer again. Aurelia's heart hammered, but her mind stayed sharp. She didn't run, not yet. Running without timing meant falling. Instead, she spoke. You don't know who you're standing in front of. One of them shrugged. And you don't know who we are. Their voices weren't rich, not corporate, not strategic. Street, raw, unfiltered. And that's when Aurelia understood her parents were wrong. This wasn't business. This was the city claiming what looked alone. A car horn blasted suddenly nearby. Light flooded the street as a taxi turned the corner. The men paused, just long enough. Aurelia didn't hesitate anymore. She ran, not graceful, not proud, human. Her heels slapped pavement, lungs burning, ponytail loosening, jacket flying open. The city blurred as adrenaline dragged her forward. She dodged trash bins, splashed through puddles, nearly slipped, caught herself, kept moving. Behind her, footsteps thundered for seconds, then stopped. She didn't slow until her chest felt like it would tear open. She leaned against a brick wall, breath shaking, makeup untouched but soul rearranged. Aurelia Knox had been touched by danger, not in headlines, not in boardrooms, on the street, where money doesn't echo. The Knox house woke up to tension before sunlight. Phones rang quietly. Security doors clicked more often. Staff whispered instead of walked. Aurelia arrived home just before dawn, slipping past marble like a ghost wearing yesterday's confidence. Her robe replaced her jacket, but nothing replaced the heaviness sitting in her chest. Her mother noticed first. Not the clothes, not the makeup, the silence. Aurelia, Evelyn whispered. You look pale. Aurelia poured water, hand steady but colder than usual. City air, but her father already knew something was wrong. Billionaires feel disturbances the way sailors feel storms. By noon, Knox Industries' private security room glowed with screens, maps, traffic feeds, street cameras, analysts moving fingers over keyboards like surgeons. Richard Knox stood at the center, suit flawless, eyes sharp. Someone followed her again, he said. The word again landed hard. Executives murmured. This smells like Harrow Group retaliation. No, Westbridge Corp benefits from destabilizing Knox heirs. Another voice added. Could be foreign investment pressure. Names piled. Rivals grew. The war they imagined became expensive and sophisticated. But Aurelia sat quietly in a leather chair, watching men in suits discuss street shadows like stock prices. She almost laughed. They didn't see it. They didn't hear the footsteps. They didn't smell the fear mixed with asphalt. Her mother finally asked, what did they want? Aurelia hesitated, then answered honestly. They didn't want Knox Industries. Silence. They wanted me. That sentence shifted the room. Her father's jaw tightened. Everyone wants something from us. Aurelia shook her head slowly. No, Dad, they didn't care about the company. They cared that I was alone. The room went still. For the first time, business logic cracked, but pride repaired it quickly. Richard straightened. Then we assume strategic intent. We protect the asset. Asset. Aurelia swallowed. Not daughter, not girl, asset. Her mother reached for her hand later, quietly, away from cameras and analysts. You shouldn't walk alone anymore. Aurelia looked out at the city skyline beyond glass. The same city that once admired her. The same city that now tested her. I didn't walk alone because I was careless, she said softly. I walked alone because I wanted to know if the world still bowed. Evelyn whispered. And, Aurelia's voice lowered. It doesn't. That night, Knox Industries prepared for corporate enemies. Contracts tightened. Security budgets expanded. Meetings scheduled. But the real danger wasn't wearing suits. It was wearing shadows. And it was learning. Aurelia Knox's routine. Aurelia Knox no longer walked with careless pride. She walked with awareness. The city had stopped flirting. Her parents had started planning the wrong war. And Aurelia stood between wealth and reality, realizing for the first time, luxury doesn't erase danger, it attracts it. Danger doesn't always arrive screaming. Sometimes, it arrives sealed in paper. 3 days after the street incident, Knox Tower woke up differently. Not louder, not chaotic, suspiciously quiet. Aurelia was in the dining hall scrolling through her tablet, half listening to the news, half bored by another safe morning. The city skyline glowed outside like nothing had ever tried to touch her, until a maid froze near the entrance. Her tray trembled. "Miss Knox." Aurelia looked up slowly. "What is it?" The maid stepped forward and placed a thick envelope on the table. "No stamp, no sender, just black marker ink. Aurelia Knox. Not printed. Written. By hand." The air shifted. Aurelia picked it up, feeling the roughness of cheap paper against manicured fingers. Something inside the envelope dragged heavier than paper. She opened it. A folded sheet slid out, and something else. Metal. A single bullet rolled onto the table. "Cold. Real." The maid gasped. Aurelia didn't. She unfolded the paper slowly. The handwriting was uneven, human, angry, not robotic, not corporate. It read, "Pretty girl, you walk like the city belongs to you. It doesn't. Next time you run, we won't stop. Your money can't hear you scream." There was a smear across the bottom. Not ink. Blood. Dry. Brownish red. Real enough to make the room feel smaller. Aurelia stared at it. Her heart didn't race yet. It slowed. That's what real danger does. It pulls silence into your bones before fear arrives. Minutes later, Knox security stormed the room. Gloves snapped. Radios whispered. Her parents rushed in, faces stripped of corporate calm. Evelyn Knox touched the table. "Is that blood?" Richard picked up the bullet, heavy in his palm. Not symbolic. Practical. By afternoon, more arrived. Not one. 3. One slipped under the penthouse door. One placed on her car hood. One mailed to the university office. Each different. Each worse. The second letter read, "We see your friends. We see your school. You hide behind glass, but glass breaks. Smile while you still own it." Another bullet dropped with it. The third was shorter, colder. "Run, princess, or we'll walk you ourselves." Aurelia sat in silence as her world rearranged around paper and metal. These weren't business threats. They didn't mention companies. They didn't mention money. They didn't mention negotiations. They mentioned her walks, her smile, her life. For the first time since childhood, Aurelia Knox felt her name separate from her wealth, and that separation terrified the empire around her. The Knox family stopped pretending. By nightfall, the house turned into a fortress. Extra guards, locked elevators, silent cars, routes changed every hour, and panic, hidden behind elegance. Richard Knox stood near the skyline window, hands behind his back, billionaire posture hiding fatherly fear. "This is no longer safe," he said. "We pull Aurelia out of the country." Evelyn nodded quickly. "Paris, Zurich, anywhere. Finish masters later." Aurelia sat on the velvet couch, legs crossed, ponytail loose now, eyes sharper than usual. "No." The word landed clean. Her parents turned. Richard frowned. "Aurelia, I'm not running," she said calmly. Her voice didn't shake. "I didn't build my life here to abandon it because shadows learned my name." Evelyn stepped closer. "This isn't pride, it's survival." Aurelia stood, not dramatic, certain. "I walked alone because I wanted control. I made mistakes, yes, but leaving means they win without touching me." Silence wrapped the room. Richard exhaled slowly. "Then what do you suggest?" Aurelia looked at the city beyond glass. The same city that once admired her. The same city that now threatened her. She spoke softly, but firmly. "I finish my master's." Her parents stared, and she added, turning back, "I stop pretending I'm untouchable." She paused, then said the sentence that rewrote her life. "I want a bodyguard." The word echoed. Not driver, not escort, bodyguard. Evelyn's eyes widened. "You?" "Yes," Aurelia replied. "Someone who walks the streets with me, not behind desks. Someone who understands danger, not stock markets." Richard studied his daughter differently now. Not spoiled, not reckless, evolving. "You'll be watched constantly," he warned. Aurelia smiled faintly. "Good, let danger watch me too." That night, calls were made. Not to corporations. To people who lived between law and instinct. People trained to protect without headlines. People who knew how cities really worked. somewhere in the shadows of the same city that tried to touch Aurelia Knox. Her guard was being found. The city had spoken, the letters had bled, the bullets had warned. Aurelia Knox refused to run. She chose to stay, to finish her masters, to face the streets instead of escaping them. And with one sentence, "I want a bodyguard," her destiny shifted. The Knox penthouse became a stage, not for parties, not for lessons in etiquette, but for auditions. Aurelia Knox sat in the grand living room, silk robe over her shoulders, ponytail loosened over one side, smoking a cigarette she didn't really inhale. Before her, dozens of men in pressed suits, polished shoes, and sharp faces waited silently. Bodyguards, mercenaries, soldiers, all supposedly trained to protect someone worth more than kingdoms. Aurelia didn't clap. She didn't smile. She didn't even pretend to care. "Sit," she said to the first one. "Don't move. Don't speak unless I ask. Don't breathe louder than me." The man blinked once, sat, his hands rested on his knees, perfect posture. But the faint tremor in his fingers betrayed he hadn't anticipated the tone. Minutes passed. She asked questions, practical, specific, harsh. "Can you read a room? Can you blend in without being seen? Can you disarm threats in less than 5 seconds? Can you handle me?" The last question made the room twitch. Not one man answered immediately. Not until a young, broad-shouldered man walked in. No suit, no flashy tie, just black, fitted, crisp. He didn't introduce himself. He didn't ask for permission to breathe. He walked in as though he had every right to be there. And for the first time, Aurelia's sharp gaze paused, eyes golden, like he had swallowed sunlight and kept it just for himself. Strong jawline, hair combed back, yet effortlessly natural, calm, silent, bold. Aurelia asked her usual questions. He answered briefly, directly, no arrogance, no trembling, no fear. When other candidates stuttered under the same questions, Aurelia would raise an eyebrow, dismiss them, leave. One by one, they failed her scrutiny. Too loud, too weak, too timid, too predictable. By the time the last candidate left, Aurelia leaned back, crossed her legs, and finally said aloud, "You, stay." The golden-eyed man didn't smile. He didn't frown. He simply nodded, and that was it. Not a handshake, not a courtesy bow, just acknowledgement. Her friends, who had come to mock the idea of her needing protection, snickered in the background. "You seriously picked him? He's hot." "Yeah, looks like he's going to be your boyfriend or something," another said. Aurelia scoffed. "He's not my boyfriend. He's my handbag. And like my bag, I expect him to know his place." The man didn't flinch, didn't react, didn't give her a reason to respect him yet. But he didn't give her a reason to disrespect him either. And Aurelia realized he was different. The next day, Aurelia didn't need to announce him. He simply appeared, outside her lecture hall, leaning against the wall, not touching her, not even making a move, simply watching, silent, like a shadow with intent. She rolled her eyes at first. "I don't need a babysitter," she muttered to herself, her friends trailing behind. But her friends noticed him too. Some whispered, others laughed. "Is that your boyfriend? Who is that guy? Seriously? He's following you everywhere." Aurelia crossed her arms, unbothered. "He's not my boyfriend. He's my handbag. Keep walking." Her friends laughed so hard they almost forgot class. The man didn't. He didn't smile. He didn't react. He just followed, quietly, everywhere she went. Class, library, lunch breaks, campus walks. Sometimes she caught his gaze, golden eyes meeting hers, unwavering. She snapped at him once in the library, loud enough for nearby students to glance over. "Do you plan to live here forever, or just stalk me for fun?" He didn't answer. She repeated it. Still silence. By the 5th time, she realized he was not afraid. Not of her. Not of anyone. She could insult him, belittle him, order him around, and he never flinched, never reacted. She had never met someone like this. Not in school, not in her world, not even in her mirrors. The man simply existed, and she hated and admired that in equal measure. Weekends brought Aurelia into the city's nightlife, lounges with flashing lights, clubs with throbbing bass, cocktails with umbrellas, and laughter that filled expensive air. Her friends dragged her from table to table, music pounding in their ears. And as usual, the golden-eyed man appeared, not inside the club, outside, leaning against a wall, silent, scanning. Aurelia noticed him when she left for a smoke break on the balcony. Her friends whispered, "He's still here. Why doesn't he come in?" Aurelia shrugged. "My handbag doesn't dance." She lit her cigarette, exhaling smoke like defiance. The man tilted his head slightly, observing, waiting, not judging, not speaking, not laughing, not even stepping closer. The world called him intimidating. She called him annoying. The city outside blurred cars, lights, people, music. And in the middle of it all, Aurelia realized she had no control over him simply existing. Not like she had control over the city, the campus, the parties. He existed quietly, firmly, immovably. And the thought made her stomach twist, but she would never show it. Her friends laughed at the absurdity of the boyfriend theory, not realizing it was the only rumor Aurelia secretly didn't mind spreading, because he wasn't hers. Not yet, not ever at least. That was her plan. Aurelia eventually asked his name. "Wait," she said, voice sharp, ponytail falling over one shoulder. "What's your name?" He didn't answer immediately, simply waited, calm, golden eyes fixed. "You're the only one who doesn't get scared of me," she continued, smirk curling lips. "I need to know who to ignore." Finally, he spoke. "Dante." Short, direct, no flourish. She repeated the name. "Dante," she said. "Good, that's enough. Don't make it more." He didn't ask for permission. He didn't protest. He simply nodded. That was the rule between them. He existed. She ruled. Silence was his loyalty. And Aurelia realized that for all the audacity, arrogance, and pride she carried, he had none of her fear, none of her showiness, and none of her need for attention. He was simply there, and she decided to keep him there, exactly where she wanted. No flirting, no affection, no distraction, just Dante, reliable, silent, imposing. And Aurelia Knox was finally meeting someone who wouldn't bend to her, who wouldn't need her, who wouldn't ask for her world. A few nights later, after an exhausting night celebrating a group project victory with her friends, Aurelia drank more than usual. Her laughter was loud, tipsy, unrestrained, a stark contrast to her usual pride and control. When she tried to leave the lounge alone, Dante was already there standing silently in the doorway, golden eyes calm, unblinking. "You're not walking home like this," he said, voice low. Aurelia, slurring slightly, I'm fine." He didn't argue. He simply stepped closer, putting a steadying hand on her elbow. His grip was firm, not forceful, but Aurelia felt her balance return. The streets were dark, empty, and unwelcoming. She stumbled once. He caught her, twice, never a word. By the time they reached the penthouse, Aurelia was exhausted, unsteady. Dante didn't complain. He didn't tease. He guided her to her bedroom, helped her settle under her silk covers. "You'll sleep," he said, tone not asking, but commanding in its quietness. Aurelia, sleepy, muttered, "You're a handbag, remember?" He only nodded. No flinch, no smile. And that night, Aurelia realized something terrifying in its simplicity. She could trust him to be there, and that trust didn't require her to like him. Master's studies were no playground. Aurelia had slipped through her undergraduate years relying on her wealth and charm. But here, she could no longer buy her grades. Professors demanded rigor. Assignments were merciless. One night, facing a project worth almost half her grade, Aurelia sat at her desk, notes scattered, laptop open. She bit her lip, frustration building. She didn't understand the complexity equations, research citations, statistical analysis. She slammed her hands on the table. "Ugh, I can't do this." Dante appeared quietly at the door. He didn't enter immediately. He just stood, watching, silent, observing. Aurelia, irritated. Are you going to lecture me or actually help? He nodded once and sat opposite her, pulling the laptop closer, rearranging papers with precise movements. Hours passed. He explained patiently, step by step. No patronizing tone, no rush, just guidance. She followed. Notes clicked. Formulas made sense. Arguments crystallized. By the end of the night, Aurelia looked at the assignment completed on her laptop. Her hands shook slightly, excitement, disbelief, pride. She had done it. She had passed. Not by luck, not by money, but by focus and guidance. The next day in class, her professor called her submission remarkably detailed and unusually precise for someone who usually relies on others' work. Her classmates gasped. Whispers circled. How did she do that? Who helped her? Aurelia sipped her coffee, ponytail slightly messy, and smiled faintly to herself. Dante sat outside the classroom, as always, golden eyes calm. He didn't need recognition. He didn't need thanks. And Aurelia Knox, for the first time, realized the value of silent, constant reliability. Aurelia Knox had made a decision she never thought she would. Dinner, not with friends, not for business, but for him, Dante. Not out of love, not out of affection, out of appreciation. At least, that was the excuse she told herself. The restaurant was elite. Crystal chandeliers, white tablecloths, delicate glasses that felt like they could shatter with a glance. The kind of place where wealth wore invisible wings, and whispers of the elite floated above polished silverware. Aurelia led Dante to the table. He didn't complain. He didn't sit like a guest. He simply followed, silent, golden eyes scanning, posture impeccable. The waiter approached, notebook ready. Aurelia leaned back in her chair and began. Table for two, and make sure the champagne is the best you've got. We're celebrating. My gift to him. The waiter nodded nervously. Aurelia glanced at Dante and smirked, her ponytail falling over her shoulder. Try to enjoy it, and don't look bored. Dante remained silent, not bored, not impressed, not intimidated. Aurelia, on the other hand, she decided to entertain herself. Ordering became a show. Every dish chosen with dramatic flair, every wine described in a way that made the waiter sweat. Dante finally leaned slightly forward. You're embarrassing them, he said quietly. Aurelia laughed, sharp and unamused. I'm embarrassing them. They're the ones here to serve. My dinner, my rules. Dante frowned. Your behavior will have consequences. She turned suddenly, her hand smacking his shoulder lightly, though enough to draw eyes. I don't care. Heads turned. Glassware clinked. The waiter bit their lip, taking notes silently. Aurelia finished her rant, stood, and walked out. She hadn't even noticed Dante didn't follow. She didn't see him leave his chair. She didn't see the tension in his shoulders. She didn't see him disappear silently into the night. Aurelia searched, through streets, through cafes, through the quiet corners of the city where she thought Dante might be resting. Finally, in a small, modest apartment on the lower side of the city, she found him. He was sitting on a simple wooden chair. No gold, no black suits, no commanding presence over elites. Just Dante, calm, golden eyes watching her, silent. She froze. Pride battled reality. Then, finally, something broke. I'm sorry, she whispered. The words left her lips for the first time in her life, pure and unguarded. Dante didn't respond immediately. He simply watched, golden eyes measuring, silent, strong, immovable. I was wrong, she continued, ponytail falling over her shoulder, hands clenching slightly. I embarrassed you publicly. I didn't mean. He finally nodded once. No lecture, no scolding, no punishment. I want you back, she added softly, almost unsure of herself. A long silence. Then Dante stood, golden eyes softened slightly. Not for her, not yet. But the weight of his presence returned. He followed her back to her world, back into her life. The city had shifted. The rules had changed. Aurelia realized, sometimes pride is the enemy. Sometimes silence is louder than words. Sometimes, the strongest bond is built without a single spark of affection. And in that quiet moment, for the first time, Aurelia Knox felt a small tremor of humility. After Dante returned, Aurelia's life slipped back into motion, but not the same rhythm it once had. Something felt altered. Before, she walked like the world belonged to her. Now, she walked like the world was watching. Morning came with tinted windows and quiet drivers. Campus gates opened like rituals. Students still whispered her name, still envied her money, still feared her temper. But Aurelia noticed something else now. People looked twice, not at her, at Dante. He no longer walked half a step behind. He walked beside her, not boyfriend close, not servant far, just close enough to block danger without announcing it. At the university, Aurelia strutted through marble corridors in short skirts, sunglasses hanging on her nose, ponytail swinging confidently. Her friends laughed loudly, gossiping about parties and professors. But Dante didn't join conversations. He scanned reflections in glass walls, tracked footsteps behind them, noticed the man standing too long by the vending machine. Aurelia noticed his eyes moving. Why do you always look like someone's about to die? She asked lightly. Because someone always is, Dante replied calmly. She scoffed. Drama king. But later that day, Aurelia realized the city wasn't just background noise anymore. It had started listening. She felt it in the pauses between sounds, in the way cars slowed near her, in the way strangers pretended not to stare. And for the first time in her rich, reckless life, Aurelia Knox didn't feel untouchable. Night brought temptation. Aurelia loved the night. Lights, music, bodies, noise loud enough to bury conscience. Her friends dragged her into a high-rise club downtown. Glass walls, neon floors, DJs pounding rhythm into bones. She didn't invite Dante. He followed anyway. Inside, smoke curled around chandeliers. Bass shook the ribs. Students danced like tomorrow didn't exist. Aurelia slipped into her element. Short dress, bare legs, laugh sharp enough to cut. She ordered drinks without counting. Tequila burned her throat. Dante stood near the bar, arms folded, golden eyes reflecting neon chaos. Guys approached her, some brave, some foolish. A tall boy leaned close. Who's your boyfriend? Aurelia laughed. He's not my boyfriend. Danny's jaw tightened slightly. The boy smirked. Then why does he look like he'd kill me? Before Aurelia could answer, Dante leaned forward calmly. Because you're standing too close. The boy backed away instantly. Later, Aurelia felt dizzy. The music blurred. The lights doubled. She stumbled slightly. Before she hit the floor, Dante's arm caught her waist. Not romantic, protective, firm, controlled. You're drunk, he said quietly near her ear. She scoffed. I'm rich. There's a difference. He didn't smile. He carried her out anyway. Outside, cold air slapped her skin. Aurelia leaned into his jacket without realizing it. And for the first time, she didn't pull away. Back in the car, silence grew heavy. City lights streaked past the windows like broken stars. Aurelia stared forward, lips pressed together. You don't own me, she finally said. Dante didn't look at her. I'm paid to keep you alive. She turned sharply. And I didn't ask to be treated like a child. He exhaled slowly. Then stop acting like one. The words hit harder than any slap. Aurelia froze. No one talked to Aurelia Knox that way. Not professors, not parents, not friends. But Dante did. I'm not here to flatter you, he continued calmly. I'm here because people don't like billionaires. Daughters breathing too freely. She laughed bitterly. You think someone cares enough to hurt me? Dante finally turned. They already do. Silence swallowed the car. For once, Aurelia had nothing clever to say. Outside, skyscrapers reflected her face, rich, young, beautiful, and suddenly fragile. And she hated how much his words made sense. Before, she left rooms without announcing herself. Before, she slammed doors just to feel powerful. Before, she disappeared into the city whenever boredom scratched her pride. Now she waited. She stood by the mansion stairs in the mornings, phone idle in her hand, ponytail tied neatly instead of messy rebellion. Dante arrived exactly at 6:30 every day. Not late, not early, consistent. His footsteps echoed across marble floors before he even appeared. Aurelia noticed how her breathing adjusted when she heard them. Not relief, not comfort, something quieter. Control. They drove together now. Always. The city still glittered, but she no longer felt like its queen. She felt like its guest. At campus, students whispered differently. Not about Aurelia Knox. About the man beside her. Who is he? Military? Private security? Boyfriend? She hated that word. He's paid, she snapped once. But when someone laughed at him, Aurelia didn't join in anymore. She noticed small things. How Dante opened doors before she reached them. How he memorized her class schedule without asking. How he stood outside lecture halls for hours without checking his phone. One afternoon, rain poured suddenly. Students ran. Aurelia froze under the steps, dress clinging to her skin. Before she could complain, Dante removed his jacket and placed it over her shoulders. She looked up. I didn't ask. I know. She didn't return it immediately, and neither of them mentioned it. Aurelia was smart, but spoiled intelligence ages badly. Master's level courses didn't bow to money, statistics, corporate law, advanced business ethics. The professor spoke like oxygen was expensive. Aurelia sat in the back row, tapping her nails, pretending focus. Until results were posted, she failed. Not badly, but publicly. Her name sat under a red line. Students whispered. Knox finally slipped. That night, Aurelia locked herself in the study room at home. Books scattered like enemies. She stared at numbers that refused to make sense. Dante stood by the door, watching her suffer quietly. After an hour, he spoke. You're solving it backward, she scoffed. You're a bodyguard, not a professor. I used to tutor, he replied calmly. She paused. Since when? Since survival needed education. He pulled a chair beside her. Not close, not distant, balanced. For hours, Dante explained concepts slowly. No insults, no pride, just logic. Aurelia listened without realizing she had stopped being defensive. By midnight, the pages finally made sense. The next week, Aurelia submitted the assignment and scored highest in class. Gasps followed her name. The professor adjusted his glasses twice. Students stared. Aurelia didn't smile. She just glanced at the door where Dante waited quietly. For once, she felt earned. At lunch, her friends gathered around the glass cafeteria tables, music playing softly, students laughing. One girl leaned closer. So, your guard, does he breathe? Laughter followed. Another added, he looks like a statue following your bag around. Aurelia smirked automatically, then stopped. She pictured Dante standing in rain, waiting in hallways, solving her failures quietly. She placed her drink down. He's not my bag. The table went silent. They blinked. Aurelia realized what she'd said and didn't take it back. He's doing his job better than any of you do yours. Awkward laughter followed, but something had shifted. That evening, Dante noticed her mood change. You're quieter today. She shrugged. People are loud. He nodded. They walked in silence. But this time, it didn't feel empty. Days passed. No new threats. No envelopes. No bullets. But danger doesn't always speak. Sometimes it watches. One night, Aurelia stood by her bedroom window, city glowing below. Dante leaned against the door frame. You're changing, he said quietly. She didn't turn. People say that when they're bored. No, they say it when they notice. She sighed. I hate being scared. He crossed his arms. Fear means you value staying alive. She looked back at him. And you? I value keeping you that way. Their eyes met. Not romance. Something steadier. Something dangerous in its own way. Trust. Outside, the city kept breathing. Inside, Aurelia Knox finally slept without locking her door herself. Because Dante already had. Safety became routine faster than Aurelia expected. Every morning, black car, silent ride, campus gates, Dante waiting. It was supposed to feel protected. Instead, it started to feel small. Aurelia Knox had never lived small. She missed noise. She missed reckless laughter. She missed walking into rooms like she owned oxygen. One afternoon, she stood in front of her mirror longer than usual. Short black dress, bare shoulders, ponytail higher than normal. She studied herself like she was about to meet the old Aurelia again. Dante waited by the door. You're dressed differently. She smiled slightly. Observation is part of your job. Where are we going? She grabbed her purse. A club. He paused. Not advisable. She turned. That wasn't a request. The city welcomed them with neon breath. Music leaked into streets. Engines hummed. Night owned everything daylight pretended to control. Inside the club, lights pulsed like living things. Students from campus everywhere. They froze when they saw Aurelia. Phones lifted. Whispers rushed. But Dante didn't freeze. He scanned the room, positioned himself behind her, stayed calm while chaos danced. Aurelia ordered drinks without looking back. 2. Dante frowned. I don't drink on duty. She leaned closer, voice smooth. Tonight you're not guarding a billionaire's daughter. Tonight you're guarding a bored 20-year-old girl who wants noise. The bartender slid glasses forward. She pushed one to Dante. Drink. He hesitated. She smiled dangerously. For once, stop being stone. The glass touched his lips, and the night shifted. The first drink didn't change Dante. The second one didn't either. But the third softened something he kept locked for years. His shoulders loosened. His eyes stopped scanning exits every second. Aurelia noticed. She laughed louder than usual, dragged him into the crowd. Music swallowed rules. Lights painted faces. At first, Dante kept distance. But Aurelia didn't understand distance. She danced like gravity was optional. Hair swinging, dress moving with rhythm. Students stared. Some whispered, "Is that her guard?" Aurelia turned toward Dante suddenly. "Why are you always serious?" He answered honestly. "Because someone has to survive." She laughed. "That's sad." She grabbed his wrist, pulled him closer. Not romantic. Not yet. Just proximity. Just heat. Their bodies moved near without touching. Then accident happened. Her heel slipped. She almost fell. Dante caught her instinctively, hands on her waist. For half a second too long, the music kept playing, but the world around them didn't. They froze. Her breath met his chest. His grip tightened slightly. Aurelia looked up, not proud, not rude, just human. She didn't pull away, and Dante didn't either. Aurelia wasn't drunk often, but tonight, rebellion tasted stronger than alcohol. She laughed too much, spoke too fast, held Dante's arm longer than needed. Outside the club, cold air hit her face. She swayed. Dante caught her again. "You had too much." She smiled lazily. "You drank too." "That's different." She squinted. "Why?" "Because I don't get protected." The car ride was quiet. City lights passed like memories. Aurelia leaned against the window, then slowly, against Dante's shoulder. He didn't move, didn't push her away, didn't correct it. At the mansion, she struggled walking upstairs. Dante supported her gently, not carrying, not forcing, just guiding. Inside her room, the air felt softer. Aurelia sat on the bed and laughed quietly. "You're weird." He stood by the door. "You're drunk." She looked at him. "Sit." He didn't. She patted the bed. "Dante." The way she said his name wasn't rude. It wasn't commanding. It was curious. He hesitated, then sat at the edge. Silence thickened. Her laughter faded. She studied his face like she never had before. "You don't look paid anymore." He exhaled slowly. "And you don't look untouchable." Their eyes stayed locked. No music, No crowd, just breathing, just truth. Aurelia leaned forward, not fast, not careless, just close enough to change history. Dante whispered, Aurelia, you're not sober. She smiled softly, but I'm honest. And honesty pushed the night forward. Time slowed, not because of desire, because of decision. Dante stood up suddenly. You're crossing a line. Aurelia stood too. So are you. Silence stretched. The city outside whispered through glass. She stepped closer. You followed me everywhere. You protected me. You waited for me. She looked into his eyes. Now stay. Dante swallowed. Years of discipline cracked quietly, not violently, not recklessly, just humanly. He reached for her hand, not her body, not her waist, her hand. Their fingers intertwined. The room felt smaller, their breathing louder. Aurelia leaned into him, this time not accidental, not playful, intentional. Dante held her carefully, like fear and want were negotiating inside him. Her head rested against his chest, and for the first time, neither of them thought about rules, only closeness, only warmth, only the moment that rewrote everything. The door stayed closed, the lights dimmed, the city slept, and on that bed, their love story quietly began. Morning arrived softly, like it didn't want to interrupt whatever happened in the dark. Sunlight crept through Aurelia Knox's curtains, touching the edge of her bed, her mirror, her quiet room. The city was awake, but Aurelia wasn't ready to be. She opened her eyes slowly. Her head felt light, her memory felt heavy, not because of alcohol, because of Dante. The night replayed in fragments. The club, his arms, the silence, their hands. She sat up suddenly. The room looked normal, too normal for what she felt. She checked her phone. 7:42 am. Class in 1 hour. Her door was closed, her room untouched. No proof anything emotional happened, except her heartbeat. Aurelia stood and walked to the window. The mansion garden was calm, and there he was, Dante, standing outside like nothing changed. Suit perfect, posture disciplined, face unreadable. The same guard, but not the same man. Her chest tightened. Last night, he was warmth. Now he was distance. She changed slowly. Not short dress today. Soft jeans, white top, high ponytail. She wanted control back. Downstairs, the dining room smelled of coffee and quiet wealth. Her parents were already seated. Richard Knox scrolling business news. Evelyn sipping tea gently. Neither noticed Aurelia's emotional storm. Morning, Evelyn said. Aurelia replied softly. Morning. Richard didn't look up. Dandy's ready. Her fork paused. She nodded. Outside, Dante opened the car door. Their eyes met for 1 second too long, then both looked away. The ride was silent, not uncomfortable, but dangerous. Because silence after closeness always is, campus felt different. Not because of school, because Aurelia walked beside Dante, not ahead of him anymore. Students noticed. Whispers returned. Phones lifted. Someone laughed. Is that her boyfriend now? Aurelia froze for half a second, then laughed dryly. Don't be stupid. She turned to Dante and lowered her voice. You walk behind me. His jaw tightened slightly. As you wish. He obeyed, but something about obedience felt heavier now. In class, Aurelia tried to focus, but her mind stayed parked on Dante outside, waiting, watching, existing for her safety. Her professor spoke about business ethics. Ironic. During break, her friends surrounded her. Mila smirked. So, rich girl, your shadow got closer. Aurelia rolled her eyes. He's paid, another friend teased. He's handsome for paid. Aurelia snapped. Enough. They exchanged looks. Something was different about her. After lectures, Aurelia walked out. Dante stood where always. But now, he didn't look like background anymore. He looked like choice. They walked to the car. She stopped suddenly. About last night, he stopped too, but didn't face her. It shouldn't change anything. Her voice cracked quietly. Why? He finally looked at her. Because you're Aurelia Knox, and I'm hired. That hurt more than insults ever did. She crossed her arms. So what was it? He paused. Human. One word. Heavy enough to stay all day. That evening, Aurelia attended a small elite networking party at campus. Wine, music, fake smiles. Dante stayed near the wall, professional again, until a guy approached Aurelia. Tall, confident, smelled expensive. Knox, right? She smiled politely. Yes. He leaned closer. You vanished lately. Aurelia laughed lightly. Busy. The guy touched her arm casually, and Dante noticed. Not loudly, not violently, just emotionally. His jaw tightened, his posture shifted. Aurelia felt it without seeing. She glanced toward Dante and caught his eyes burning quietly. Not anger, possession. She excused herself from the guy, walked toward Dante. Relax, he answered coldly. I am relaxed. She smiled slightly. No, you're jealous, he scoffed. I don't get jealous. She stepped closer. You don't hide it well. Silence stood between them. Finally, he whispered. You don't belong to anyone here. Her heart skipped. And neither do you. But neither of them walked away. Late night drive. City quiet. Aurelia leaned against the window again. Just like the night it all changed. She broke the silence. Do you regret last night? Dante didn't answer immediately. Then softly, no. Her breath caught. Then why are you acting like it never happened? Because if I don't, he thought, I'll fall. Instead he said, because feelings destroy structure. She laughed sadly. Maybe structure deserves destruction. He finally turned. Aurelia, I protect you, she whispered back. And who protects you from me? The car stopped at the mansion gate. Neither moved. Not yet. Their eyes locked again. No touching, no crossing, just tension strong enough to hurt. She opened the door slowly. Before stepping out, she said quietly, you didn't break rules last night. You broke distance. Then she walked inside, leaving Dante alone with a heartbeat he never trained for. Aurelia Knox was no longer pretending that Dante was just her shadow. She still walked ahead of him, still wore confidence like armor, still insulted strangers when bored, but something changed in the way she waited. Before, she walked without checking if he followed. Now, every few steps, she glanced back. Not obvious, just instinctive. On campus, the whispers had evolved. Not who is he, but why is he always with her? In the calf line, a girl laughed loudly. Imagine being rich and still needing a babysitter. Aurelia heard it. Before Dante could move, she turned, her voice calm. Imagine talking about people who protect what you'll never touch. Silence fell. The girl blinked. Aurelia didn't shout, didn't insult further. She simply walked back beside Dante. Not ahead of him, beside. Dante noticed. He didn't comment, but something warm moved behind his ribs. Later, in class, Aurelia struggled with an advanced finance model. Her pencil paused. She sighed, then quietly whispered, Dante. He leaned slightly. Yes? Can you check something? She slid her notebook toward him. He hesitated. You don't need me for academics. She smiled faintly. I need you for clarity. He studied the numbers, adjusted a few things, returned it. Aurelia's eyes widened. Oh, she whispered. You make chaos look simple. He answered softly. Only when someone listens. And Aurelia Knox was finally listening. Power had always belonged to Aurelia. Money, status, fearless attitude. But love doesn't respect hierarchy. One afternoon, they attended a private faculty gathering. Professors, donors, elite families. Richard Knox stood proudly with Evelyn beside him. Aurelia entered late. Dante followed. Immediately, eyes shifted. A senior donor chuckled. Miss Knox, you bring security into intellectual spaces now? Aurelia stopped. Everyone waited. She didn't smile. This isn't security. She glanced at Dante. This is discipline. Murmurs moved through the hall. Richard raised a brow. Later, her mother pulled her aside. You speak of him differently lately. Aurelia shrugged. He works differently. Evelyn smiled politely, but curiosity lived behind her eyes. That night at home, Richard noticed something else. At dinner, Aurelia didn't eat first anymore. She waited until Dante stood near the door. She looked at him before touching her fork. Small habit, big meaning. Richard Knox noticed everything, but said nothing. Not yet. The city looked quiet that night, lights blinking like tired stars. Dante drove slower than usual. Aurelia leaned against the window again, her favorite thinking position. Dante, yes. Do you believe people are born into cages? He glanced at her. Sometimes. She smiled softly. I was born into gold. Silence followed. She continued. But gold still traps. Dante didn't interrupt. She turned toward him fully. When you came into my life, everything felt lighter. His hands tightened on the steering wheel. Aurelia. She didn't stop. I don't laugh because I'm bored anymore. I laugh because you're there. The car slowed near the mansion gate. She whispered, I think I'm falling in love with you. Time froze. Even the engine sounded afraid. Dante parked, turned, looked at her. Not cold, not angry, just terrified. Aurelia Knox, he said quietly. You don't fall for men like me. She frowned. Why? Because your world eats mine. She reached for his hand. He pulled back gently. Because your father doesn't hire sons. He hires tools. Her chest tightened. He continued softly. You're light, and I'm built for shadows. Tears formed in her eyes. So you're rejecting me? He nodded slowly. Before your life punishes you for choosing wrong. Silence filled the car. Aurelia whispered. Sometimes wrong feels like truth, but Dante had already opened the door, ending the moment before it destroyed him. Inside the mansion, Aurelia walked slower than usual. Her heels didn't echo. They whispered. At the stairs, Evelyn watched her. Are you all right? Aurelia forced a smile. Just tired. Richard Knox closed his tablet slowly. Tired people don't stare at drivers. Aurelia froze. He continued calmly. You've grown close to him. She met his eyes. He works hard. Richard nodded. That's not what closeness looks like. Evelyn intervened softly. She's young, Richard. Aurelia swallowed. There's nothing happening. Not because it was true, but because truth felt dangerous. Richard studied her for a long second, then nodded. Good. But fathers always know when lies breathe. After Aurelia confessed, the world didn't explode. It went quiet instead. Too quiet. The kind of silence that lives between two people who suddenly know too much. Dante still arrived at 6:30, still opened doors, still followed her to campus. But something invisible stood between them now. Before, Aurelia spoke without thinking. Now, she thought without speaking. In the car, music played low, but neither of them touched the volume. Sometimes her hand almost reached for him then stopped halfway. Dante noticed everything. The way she no longer insulted strangers. The way she dressed softer. The way her pride had slowed into grace. She studied harder too. Not for her parents. Not for money. For herself. For the first time in her life, Aurelia Knox wanted to earn something without buying it. Late nights filled the mansion. Books stacked high. Laptop glowing till dawn. Dante sat quietly outside her study room, reading reports, guarding the hallway, listening to her soft footsteps pacing inside. Sometimes she opened the door just to look at him, not speak, just look, and Dante looked back. Two people pretending nothing was changing while everything already had. Graduation season arrived softly, not loud like parties, but steady like destiny finally showing its receipt. Aurelia's master's results were released early morning. She sat at the breakfast table with her laptop open, fingers frozen above the trackpad. For once, she was scared, not of failure, but of knowing she deserved whatever appeared. Dante stood behind her chair. You ready? She inhaled. Open it. He nodded. She clicked. Silence swallowed the room. Then her eyes widened. First-class honors. Top 5 of her department. No payments. No favors. No shortcuts. Pure work. Her lips trembled. I did it. Dante smiled real this time. You earned it. Aurelia stood suddenly and hugged him. Not long. Not dramatic. Just instinctive. Then she realized. Pulled back quickly. I'm sorry. Dante didn't step away. It's okay. but his voice was quieter than usual. That day at school, students who once mocked her now whispered admiration. Knox changed. She actually studies. She's not just rich. Aurelia walked taller, but differently, not proud, grounded. For the first time in her life, Aurelia Knox wasn't living on her father's shadow. She was standing in her own light, and Dante watched it happen like someone witnessing sunrise after a long night. Graduation day arrived dressed in white clouds and gold sunlight. Students filled the open campus grounds in elegant gowns. No uniforms, just identity. Aurelia wore a soft cream graduation dress, ponytail flowing, confidence matured instead of loud. Dante followed in a black tailored suit. Not a guard, not a servant, just presence. Parents clapped, cameras flashed, names echoed. Miss Aurelia Knox. Applause rolled. She walked the stage gracefully, collected her certificate, turned, and looked directly at Dante. Not her parents, not the crowd, him. Later, outside near the photography area, families gathered for pictures. Richard and Evelyn stood beside Aurelia. Photographer smiled. Who else? Aurelia turned suddenly. Dante. Everyone paused. Dante blinked. Miss, come, she said softly. He hesitated. Richard's brows lifted, but Aurelia didn't wait. She grabbed Dante's wrist gently and pulled him beside her. Camera flashed. Click, click, click. Students whispered. Parents stared. Evelyn covered her lips slightly. After the photos, Richard pulled them aside, his voice low, controlled. Dante. Yes, sir. You protect my daughter. Yes, sir. Richard's eyes hardened slightly. But don't forget your place. Aurelia stiffened. Richard continued calmly. My daughter will never settle for less than her future. Dante nodded. I understand. Richard looked at Aurelia. Do you? She met his eyes. I understand effort, not price. Silence followed. Richard didn't argue, but power rested heavy in the air. Dante stepped back respectfully, but Aurelia didn't move away from him. Not anymore. Graduation ended, but something bigger had begun. The question of who deserved who. That evening, the city glowed again. Not loud, peaceful. Aurelia stood on the balcony in her graduation robe, certificate resting beside her. Dante leaned on the railing a few steps away. Wind moved gently. She spoke softly. Today felt different. Dante nodded. You crossed a line. She smiled faintly. No, I erased one. Silence. Then she turned. Thank you for not leaving. He met her gaze. Thank you for becoming someone worth staying for. Their eyes locked. Not desperate, not dramatic, just honest. Love wasn't screaming anymore. It was learning how to walk slowly, together, without permission, without fear. Yet, after graduation, the mansion felt too quiet, not peaceful, controlled. Aurelia walked through marble halls like a guest in her own life. Everything was paid for, everything was guarded, everything was decided, except her heart. That evening, she found Dante in the garage, checking one of the black cars. The lights were dim, oil and perfume mixed in the air. Dante, she whispered. He turned. You shouldn't be here alone. She stepped closer. I'm tired of being safe and empty. Silence stretched. She continued. Since the day I pulled you into my graduation photo, nothing feels pretend anymore. Dante exhaled slowly. Aurelia, your father. I know. She cut in gently. But love doesn't wait for permission. She reached for his hand. This time, he didn't pull back. His fingers closed around hers. The world suddenly felt smaller. Braver, she whispered. Let's choose us. Even quietly, Dante searched her eyes. Not the billionaire's daughter, not the spoiled girl, just Aurelia. I'll walk with you, he said. But once we start, nothing stays easy. She smiled through fear. I've had easy. It bored me. That night, without parents knowing, without announcements, without protection of money, Aurelia Knox and Dante Carter became something real. Not officially, but honestly. 2 days later, Aurelia stopped running. She walked straight into her father's office. Glass walls, city skyline, power breathing quietly. Richard Knox looked up from his tablet. Aurelia, She didn't sit. I need to talk to you. He leaned back. You always do. Her voice didn't shake. I care about Dante. Silence cut the air. Richard slowly stood. You care about what he represents. No, she said. I care about who he is. Richard's jaw tightened. You are a Knox. She swallowed. And he's human. Richard laughed once. Cold. You don't date employees. I'm not dating him, she replied. I'm choosing him. The room darkened emotionally. Richard walked closer. You choose him, and you lose me. Her breath caught. You wouldn't. I will, he interrupted calmly. I'll freeze your accounts. I'll remove your access. I'll take his job. Aurelia whispered. You're punishing love. Richard's voice lowered. I'm protecting legacy. She stared at him. You taught me strength, he replied. I taught you position. Then he pressed the intercom. Security. Aurelia's heart raced. Terminate Dante Carter's contract immediately. Her world cracked silently. That night, everything disappeared. Her credit cards stopped working. Her driver stopped answering. Her phone alerts blinked cold. Account access denied. Aurelia stood in her room, stunned. Then the door opened. 2 staff members entered quietly. Miss Knox, your father requested limited movement. Limited meant trapped. No shopping, no leaving, no contact with Dante. Downstairs, she watched from the balcony as Dante packed his locker. No shouting, no drama, just dignity. He didn't look up. Because love hurts worse when eyes meet. Her knees weakened. She slid to the floor, cried without sound. First night, second night, third night, she didn't dress, didn't eat properly, didn't insult anyone. She just stared at walls that once felt expensive and now felt empty. She whispered his name in silence. Dante. Luxury without love became punishment. And Aurelia Knox finally understood poverty of the heart. On the 4th morning, sunlight entered softly. Aurelia stood by the window, eyes swollen, voice calm, not broken, determined. She whispered, You can take my cards, you can take my cars, you can take my name. She touched the glass, but you can't take who I love. Downstairs, Richard Knox sat reading reports. Evelyn watched Aurelia from afar, silent tears in her eyes. A mother understanding too late. Aurelia picked up her phone and typed a message she wasn't allowed to send. But love doesn't ask for permission. She saved it anyway. For the day she would walk free again. For the day Dante wouldn't protect her, but stand beside her. Not as guard, as choice, as equal. And somewhere beyond locked gates and frozen wealth, 2 hearts were still walking toward the same future. Quietly, bravely, without gold. Aurelia Knox sat in her room, untouched luxury around her. Cameras, guards, cards, wealth all frozen by her father's order. But Dante's hand on hers was warm, alive, and unyielding. I can't stay here, she whispered. I can't be caged in wealth while my heart is free. Dante nodded, golden eyes steady. Then we leave. It was sudden, brave, terrifying, but inevitable. Aurelia packed only essentials. No jewelry, no designer clothes, no trace of Knox opulence. Dante carried the small bag she insisted on dragging. They walked past security cameras, past silent guards, past halls that smelled like authority. And when they reached the city streets, the world finally felt theirs. Concrete under their shoes, wind in their hair, freedom in their lungs. For the first time, Aurelia smiled without fear. Weeks passed in quiet anonymity. No mansions, no chauffeurs, no endless luxuries. Aurelia learned laundry, cooking, walking to work. Every day was a lesson. Every meal was earned. Every laugh came without pretense. Dante taught her patience, and sometimes, without words, she learned humility. They rented a small apartment. Nothing fancy, just walls, windows, and 2 hearts together. Aurelia's high ponytail became simple bun. Her heels were replaced by worn sneakers. And yet, she felt richer than ever. Dante was steady, present, not a guard, not a protector, just him. Neighbors noticed a quiet pair, young and mysterious. No one guessed their past. Aurelia reveled in the ordinary. The smell of morning toast, the hum of washing machines, the sunlight on bare walls. For the first time in 20 years, wealth wasn't her identity, love was. Her parents didn't let her disappearance go unnoticed. Weeks of phone calls, investigators, private detectives, luxury cars tracing every road. Richard and Evelyn Knox were worried, not because of Dante, not entirely, because Aurelia had vanished. Finally, one morning, a call came, found her, downtown neighborhood, small apartment, alone with. Richard Knox's jaw dropped. Evelyn gasped. They drove immediately. When they arrived, Aurelia opened the door. No fear, no running, no anger, just calm. She smiled faintly. Hi. Richard's arms crossed. You have some nerve. Aurelia held her ground. I have love, and I don't need your permission. Evelyn smiled softly. You've grown, Aurelia. Richard's voice hardened. Fine, but if he stays in your life, it comes with rules. Aurelia blinked. What rules? Marriage to the Knox family. He joins officially. Dante stepped forward. Yes, I accept. Aurelia's heart leapt. She glanced at him. Golden eyes met hers. No words, just quiet victory. After the initial confrontation, Aurelia returned to her apartment with Dante. They unpacked the news silently. Freedom with compromise. Love officially recognized. Her parents worried, but Aurelia knew she had won something far more valuable than wealth, choice. They sat on their tiny balcony, the city lights like scattered diamonds. I can't believe we get this, Aurelia whispered. Dante looked at her, calm but soft. You've fought for it, for us. She smiled. For once, I'm not a Knox in a cage. I'm Aurelia, and you're mine. Dante laughed quietly. Mine doesn't sound right, but yours fits. They watched the sunset together, and for the first time, money, power, and legacy felt distant. Because what they had bold, quiet, unshakable love was priceless. The world could wait. They didn't, and love finally won. Weeks passed quietly after their humble return to the city. Then came the day Richard Knox called Dante to his office. Not as a guard, not as a protector, but as something more. You've earned respect, Richard said, voice steady but warm. Dante's eyes widened slightly. You want me in the company? Richard nodded. A befitting title. Director of Operations. You'll report directly to me. You've proven loyalty, courage, and worth beyond your role. Dante swallowed. Thank you, sir. Richard's face softened, turning to Aurelia, who had come along. And as for you, he gestured toward the apartment she had shared with Dante. A sleek modern townhouse appeared in the distance. Your home, fully yours. Everything returned. Everything you lost. Back to you. Aurelia's eyes glistened with tears. Not for wealth, not for luxury, for freedom to live and love fully. Dante stepped beside her, golden eyes calm and proud. For the first time, Aurelia Knox felt her world completely right. The townhouse was breathtaking. Walls of glass reflected the city skyline. Marble floors gleamed in soft morning sunlight. A courtyard with fountains invited peace. Art adorned every hallway, curated tastefully. Aurelia walked through, touching surfaces gently. It's perfect, she whispered. Dante followed silently. Not because it's big, he said softly, but because it's ours. She smiled, ponytail swaying. No guards, no restrictions, no frozen credit cards, no rules other than love. Richard Knox's final gift, trust, in the form of space and dignity, and Aurelia knew that her life had truly begun. Months later, the wedding arrived. Not a small affair, not a quiet gathering, a hall big enough to host hundreds of the city's elite. Ceilings vaulted, chandeliers sparkling like captured stars. Gold and cream draped elegantly. Fresh roses and orchids lined every aisle. Aurelia walked slowly down the steps to the grand entrance. Her gown, a masterpiece, soft ivory silk that hugged her figure. A fitted bodice with delicate lace embroidery. A flowing skirt trailing gracefully behind her. A high ponytail braided lightly with pearls sparkling in her hair. All eyes turned. Dante waited at the altar, golden eyes gleaming, black tailored suit flawless, calm, strong, waiting for her completely. Richard Knox stepped forward, smiling faintly. You may now finally be happy, he whispered. The ceremony passed beautifully. No drama, no interruptions, just vows, soft and true.
Money builds walls, but love teaches us how to cross them. Status can separate lives, but respect is what truly brings hearts together. Pride creates distance. Humility creates destiny. This is elite divide, where wealth creates power, pride builds walls, and love dares to cross them. Two worlds, one forbidden heart. When status tries to decide destiny, courage rewrites it.